So it was announced late last week that computer hackers had obtained 160 megabytes of emails from the Climate Research Unit at the university, this UEA University in England. And these emails involved communication among many scientific researchers and policy advocates with similar ideological positions all across the world. And those purported authorities were brazenly discussing the destruction of hiding data that did not support these ridiculous hysteria global warming claims. Professor Phil Jones, the head of the Climate Research Unit, Professor Michael Mann at Pennsylvania State University, who had been an important scientist, so-called, in this climate debate, have come under particular scrutiny. Among his emails, Mr. Jones talked to Mr. Mann about the trick of adding in the real temps to each series to hide the decline in temperature. In other words, an outright fraud. Now, for years, we have been saying that global warming is about a greater political agenda. It's about an agenda that goes to the heart of capitalism, that puts capitalism under a microscope and under attack. And it's based on this socialist philosophy that somehow we are raping and pillaging the planet for profit, and that all these emissions are going to destroy the planet because the human condition is being advanced. Mann admitted that he was party to the conversation and lamely explained to the New York Times that, quote, scientists often use the word trick to refer to a good way to solve a problem and not something secret. Though the New York newspaper apparently buys the explanation, there's no explanation that justifies the efforts by these so-called researchers to bamboozle you and skew this data on so-called global warming to hide the decline. Now, we have pointed out, for example, if you look at the first Earth Day, they were holding up signs of the coming ice age in the world. And now they're talking about global warming. And now we're coming off one of the coldest years on record. And then, if it snows, it's global warming's fault. If a volcano erupts, it's global warming's fault. If it rains, it's global warming's fault. If it doesn't rain, if there's a drought, it's global warming. If it's cold, it's global warming. And if it's cool, it's global warming. And none of this science is legitimate. And we literally have all over the world hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of scientists, climatologists, and meteorologists that have been warning us about this for years. Anyway, here to join us with a lot of this is Chris Horner and Mark Morano. And Chris Horner wrote, Chris, I forgot the name of you, The Politically Incorrect Guide to Global Warming, if I remember correctly.
There's one right on point called Red Hot Lies, How Global Warming Alarmists Use Threats, Fraud, and Deception to Keep You Misinformed. And by chance, I named all these people and described everything they were doing that they've now acknowledged in their own words. These aren't revelations, Sean. They're affirmations.
Well, is this the final nail in the coffin of this phony science known as global warming?
A $7 billion a year U.S. taxpayer-funded industry, which is more than we spend on AIDS, by the way, is not going to go gently into the night. So expect some nasty death throes. But I don't know how we don't stay all U.S. involvement in any Kyoto Protocol discussions, any cap-and-trade discussions, and EPA's plain backdoor cap-and-trade imposition as well until this is cleared up. Because, of course, these people say there's nothing there, and I know they want to clear their name.
I found this interesting, Mark, that none of the major TV outlets, and the New York Times even said they're not going to print this on their blog because these were obtained. They were not necessarily meant for public consumption. Well, that's the whole point of it. We got to the truth with these emails exposing the agenda of these guys.
Yes, these emails. The newspapers right now are struggling with this. You have the BBC and New York Times. A lot of them are focusing more on the fact that, these have been illegally obtained. Then what's in these emails? These emails, and what we cannot let anyone forget, this is the upper echelon of the United Nations scientists. They're in the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the ones that shared the Nobel Peace Prize in 2007 with Al Gore. I've already heard from people who want to take it back. They want the Nobel Peace Prize taken back because this panel, these scientists you just mentioned, Michael Mann, Kevin Trenberg, Phil Jones, these are top UN scientists. This goes to the heart of the so-called consensus that Al Gore trumpets, that the media trumpets. They have now been shown to be gatekeepers blocking skeptical studies, blocking inconvenient data, and doing it in an open way, at the same time talking about destroying the email so they could hide the evidence. This is a scandal beyond magnitude that we've ever dealt with when it comes to global warming.
Chris, give me your interpretation of this, considering you have been excoriated, beaten down by the liberal media for years, and we have often had you on as a guest to talk about it, and now this sort of vindicates you because everything you have been saying and predicting and even naming names proved to be true.
Right. The key when you read the media coverage is, A, they're trying to change the subject to say it's just about titillating conversations and hateful speech about skeptics. No, it's the fraud, stupid. And it's also, again, an affirmation. They're describing it as maybe some revelations. It's an affirmation of all that's been pointed out. And again, in detail, I was not alone in writing that book, but I did name these names. I did say what they were doing. Oddly, they did not come after me. I suspect they have all lawyered up now because, as you know, there's some real exposure here for the things that have been revealed in their own words. And the keys are, again, not titillating emails, but we've got instructions to destroy data, instructions and collaboration on evading and undermining the law and violating the law, and an obvious intent to defraud the taxpayer. That is a problem.
I think that's a huge problem. And I guess where do we go from here? Because, you know, so many people, if you ask them, they actually believe in this global warming nonsense.
Well, Sean, this is Mark Morano here. The good news is more people believe in haunted houses than global warming. That's according to the Gallup poll from October. People get it. It is so bad for global warming that UN scientists are warning at UN meetings in September that we may face decades of global cooling. New peer-reviewed studies are showing no warming for up to 3 decades. The idea that CO2 is driving warming is now becoming scientifically untenable, as natural factors rule the day.
And here's the issue, though. Mark, here's the issue. Our administration is not seeking to ration ghosts and goblins. Our administration is aggressively moving to ration energy in the name of this. So, as you recognized yesterday, there was a new urgency by the Obama administration to say now they will put down numbers at Copenhagen for a Kyoto II treaty because they realize we must act now. They do only have a little bit of time left, and I suggest that all of this must be stayed until an investigation occurs because, as we know, these people who have been caught are insisting there's no there, so surely they want to clear their names.
Now, let me ask you this. Does this stop cap and tax in its tracks?
In a rational world, it does, because the premise has been undermined by its authors. It's been acknowledged to be they falsified results.
And beyond that, even if we face the man-made climate catastrophe, the U.S. congressional bill would have no detectable impact on temperature, and Obama's own EPA said it wouldn't even impact global CO2 levels. It's a purely symbolic bill. If we face the catastrophe and we relied on Congress, we'd be doomed.
Isn't there a person, though, that really has more egg on his face than anybody else, Al Gore? I mean, even that court decision that had come down, and I think it was Great Britain against him.
Yeah, the UK High Court in the Demick opinion, when a parent didn't like his children being indoctrinated, and yet you saw Mr. Gore swearing in front of the Society of Environmental Journalists who were applauding him and saying nothing to challenge him, swearing that the court ruled in favor of showing his movie, which, of course, the court threw out every money claim in the movie, affirmed not one statement, and threw out the premise of the movie, which we now know the authors of the premise also acknowledge.
Yeah, well, I think what's so despicable about this is I think so many people have bought into this hype. I mean, you know, the debate is over. The science is in. We've now reached a full conclusion as it relates to global warming. And now that we've had, one of the things we've done on Hannity on the Fox News Channel is we keep literally scrolling the names of experts that have challenged this so-called phony science to say that the facts are not in. And if you look at 2009, I believe it's, the 8th or 9th year coldest year on record, Chris?
None of the models projected this. None of the models even allow for it. And yet the only premise for this is computer model projections. Observations do not support the argument or the agenda, of course. It's been undermined. When they say the science is settled, Sean, just ask them, great, what settled it? When was it settled? When you run around saying the trial has been settled, we must hang X, energy use, no one can remember having had the trial. Let's at least have an investigation into the alleged settled science because, of course, we want to clear the Greens' names.
Yeah, well...
And by the way, Sean, Lori David, Al Gore's producer, is already out test marketing the next eco-scare if global warming fails. She's actually, in a Huffington Post article, said that plastic waste in some ways may be more alarming than global warming. So she was joined by the UK Green Party, who now says the man-made oxygen crisis is a greater threat. they're sensitive to the idea that global warming is going to end up in the ash heap of history in terms of concerns, and they're already test marketing the next eco scare.
Well, crossing against the light is a greater threat than global warming, so she's got to...